I went looking for Sun. I found her in a conference room with 2 other advisory board members and staffing reports spread across the table. Vacation requests from every department. Approved, approved, approved. Then mine. Denied, denied, denied. 14 years of the same words rearranged into different sentences. Equipment requests, denied. Hiring requests for a second cardiothoracic surgeon, denied. Every single one with Howard's signature on it. He'd put his own name on every no. Sun told me the full board was meeting in 90 minutes. Howard had called the meeting himself, expecting a routine pat on the back for crisis response. She'd already requested time on the agenda for a staffing review. He doesn't know what that means yet, she said. On my way out, I almost walked into Marissa McPowell, an administrator on Howard's team. Her face lit up like I was a delivery she'd been expecting. She said, "Oh good, you're here. Howard will be relieved." The board was very concerned. Howard told them, "You initially refused. That didn't look good for you." Half sympathy, half warning. Like I should be grateful Howard was giving me a chance to fix my image. Howard had poisoned the well. If I stood up in a board meeting and started talking about denied vacations, I'd look like a disgruntled employee using a crisis to settle scores. I called Julie from a stairwell. I told her Howard was 3 steps ahead. He told the board I agreed. He told the staff I refused. If I complained now, I looked petty. If I kept my mouth shut, he took the credit. I was boxed in. Julie said, "You're not boxed in. You're the only person in that building who can save a man's life. That's not a box. That's a stage." 40 minutes before the board meeting, I was back in Sun's room. She had emails I'd forwarded her queued up. 14 years of denied requests. Every line item where the surgical department's funding had gone instead. Office renovations. A catering budget for quarterly dinners that had tripled over 5 years while my OR ran on machines 8 years past replacement. She said, "You'll have 10 minutes, maybe 15. Make every second count." Then Alan opened the door, pale. He said, "Caden is crashing. The team stabilized him, but the window is closing. If you're going to operate, it has to happen in the next few hours." Hours. I couldn't do both. If I went to the board meeting, the surgical window closed and a man died because I chose a meeting over a patient. If I scrubbed in now, Howard owned the story forever. He'd manage the crisis, save the governor, take the credit, and next month deny my vacation like none of this happened. Sun said, "If you operate first, Howard owns this. Nothing changes." Alan said quietly, "The man is 47 years old. He has kids." The room went quiet. I closed my eyes. I saw Georgia at the table with her colored pencils. I heard her voice in my head, asking if Dad still lived with us. I saw Gareth bracing for a no that had become his normal. I thought about a 47-year-old man with kids sitting in chairs down the hall, feeling exactly what my kids felt every night I didn't come home. Those kids didn't know about Howard Fisk. They just wanted their dad. I opened my eyes. I said, "I'm going to operate, but I need you to delay that board meeting 3 hours. Tell them anything." When I come out of the OR, I walk straight into that boardroom, and I speak. Sun didn't argue. "I'll hold them." I changed into scrubs. The fabric felt like muscle memory. My hands moved automatically, tying the drawstring, pulling on the cap, reaching for the shoe covers. I'd done this 10,000 times. My body knew the rhythm even when my mind was somewhere else. On the way to the OR, I passed Howard's office. The door was open. He was on the phone, leaning back, smiling the way a man smiles when he thinks he's won. I heard him say, "Yes, he's here. I personally arranged his return. The surgery will proceed within the hour." Personally arranged his return. I stopped in the doorway. Howard's eyes drifted to the door and saw me. The smile didn't just fade, it froze. His mouth was still in the shape of it, but his eyes had gone wide. He lowered the phone half an inch from his ear. Neither of us moved. I said, "I'm going to save that man's life, Howard. And when I'm done, you and I are going to have a very different conversation." Howard opened his mouth. His lips moved like he was starting a word. Maybe a thank you, maybe an excuse, maybe some new spin. I didn't wait to hear it. I turned and walked toward the OR. The surgery took 6 hours. The tear was worse than Alan had described, and I had to adapt my technique twice mid-procedure to reach it safely. The first adaptation was a different cannulation approach because the original site was too compromised by the trauma. The second was a graft alignment I'd only attempted twice in my career, and never on a tear sitting where his was. At one point, maybe 3 hours in, the entire team went silent because we all understood we were one wrong millimeter from losing him. One slip from watching a governor die on the table and turning this hospital into a national news story for all the wrong reasons. The only sound for a long stretch was the monitor and the suction. The anesthesiologist had stopped giving updates and was just watching my hands. The scrub nurse passed instruments before I asked for them. Nobody in that room was thinking about anything except the next millimeter. We didn't lose him. I closed the final layer of tissue and the room exhaled. I stood there for a moment with my hands still gloved, blood on my gown, and I thought about Howard upstairs, probably already drafting his statement. He probably had talking points ready about leadership and crisis management and institutional excellence. He thought the surgery was the end of this. He didn't know Sun had held the board. I stripped my gloves, untied my gown, and walked upstairs still in my scrubs. There was a faint stain near the left sleeve. I didn't care. The boardroom was full. Sun at the long table, 2 advisory board members beside her with folders open, a wall screen with 3 main board members on video, Marissa in the corner with a notebook, Howard at the head of the table. He saw me walk in and his face did something I'd never seen it do. The smile flickered. He stood up and started, "Excellent news. The surgery was a success. I want to thank..." Sun cut him off without raising her voice. "Howard, sit down. Dr. Lombardi has been given time on the agenda to address staffing concerns." Howard's jaw tightened. He said, "This isn't the appropriate time. We're in the middle of a crisis response." A board member on the screen leaned forward. "The crisis is resolved. The governor is stable. We'd like to hear from the surgeon." Howard sat. His legs took him there. I walked to the front of the room and started talking the way I operate. Precise, steady, just facts. I told them I had submitted a formal vacation request every year for 14 years and been denied every time. I held up my phone and showed the emails. 2010, denied. 2011, denied. I told them I had requested updated surgical equipment and been denied while administrative budgets expanded. I showed them the records. Then I told them the part that mattered. I had asked, in writing, multiple times, for a second senior cardiothoracic surgeon, so the hospital would never be in a position where one person's absence could put a patient at risk. I showed them the hiring requests. Every single one had been denied. Every single one had Howard's signature on the denial. The room was quiet. Howard waited until I paused and then spoke, tight and controlled. These are operational decisions made in the best interest of the hospital. Dr. Lombardi has always been a valued member of our team, but staffing and budgeting are complex matters. I cut him off. I didn't yell. I said 4 words. You called my wife. Nobody moved. The board member who'd told Howard to sit down had her hand frozen halfway to her coffee cup. I said, when I told you no, you didn't accept it. You called my wife's personal phone and tried to guilt her into making me come back. You told her you were asking as someone who understands what family means. You said that to the woman who raised my children alone for 14 years because you wouldn't let me go home. Howard's mouth opened. No sound. The board member on the video call looked directly into her camera and said, is this true? Did you contact Dr. Lombardi's wife? Howard adjusted his tie. I was trying every avenue to ensure the governor received care. The situation was urgent. Did you or did you not tell this board yesterday that Dr. Lombardi had agreed to return voluntarily? Howard didn't answer. That's when Alan spoke from the back of the room. He'd been standing near the door the whole time. I'd almost forgotten he was there because he was so still. His voice came out calm and clear and steady. He did. I was on the call. He told the board Dr. Lombardi was already on his way. That wasn't true. Dr. Lombardi had refused and hadn't been contacted again at that point. Howard turned and looked at Alan. The look on his face wasn't anger. It was something worse. It was betrayal. Like Alan had broken some unspoken rule by telling the truth. Alan didn't flinch. He didn't look away. He just stood there with his hands at his sides and let the silence do the work. I delivered my final statement. I came back because a man was dying. Not because Howard asked. Not because this hospital earned my loyalty. I came back because I took an oath. But I want this board to understand something. This hospital had one cardiothoracic surgeon capable of performing the procedure that just saved the governor's life. One. And that's not because qualified surgeons don't exist. It's because Howard Fisk refused to hire them for 14 years so he could keep his budget numbers clean and hold my schedule hostage. You don't run a hospital by grinding your best people into the ground and then acting shocked when the ground gives way. I paused. I'll leave my future at this hospital in your hands, but I want my terms in writing before I set foot in another operating room. A second senior cardiothoracic surgeon hired within 6 months, my accrued leave honored without interference, and a director who understands that the people who save lives in this building deserve at least as much respect as the people who manage the parking lot. Howard wasn't looking at anyone. His hands were flat on the table, but they weren't steady. There was a small tremor in his fingers. I'd spent 22 years reading bodies in operating rooms, noticing the smallest signs of something giving way. Howard was giving way. I turned for the door. As it swung open, I heard Son's voice behind me, clear and unhurried. I'd like to formally request a leadership review of the director's office, effective immediately. I called Julie. I could hear the ocean. Somewhere behind her, Georgia was calling Gareth's name across the wind, neither of them knowing I was listening.